I'll start off and just ask you to come up and discuss the plans for the Thanksgiving,
no
okay? Morning, everybody. Okay. We're aware of several questions that you might ask, so the group around me are prepared to speak to the specific questions that some of you have already raised. But I'd like to start off by asking Chief James O'Neill, who's just back from a week in Israel, being briefed and interacting with our colleagues in Israel, to start off with an overview of the events coming up the next several days, the balloon blowing up on Wednesday evening, and then certainly the parade on Thursday. He'll give you some overview of the security precautions that we're taking going into those events. Jimmy?
Sure. Hey, good morning, everyone. All right, so we start off tomorrow afternoon, actually. That's when our detail starts. The balloon inflation for the 89th annual Thanksgiving Day Parade takes place tomorrow, Wednesday. The inflation starts at 11:30, West 77 to West 81, between Columbus and Central Park West. And then from 3 to 10 p.m., people want to bring their kids and see the balloon inflation should come to 79 in Columbus, West 79th Street in Columbus, and be guided by the police officers there and the event organizers. And of course, the big day is on Thursday. The parade steps off just after 9 a.m. and runs until about noon. The balloons and floats will come down the 2.5-mile parade route on Central Park West between 7-7 and 8-6, and will travel south to Columbus Circle. From there, they will move east along 59th Street to 6th Avenue and go south on 6th to 34th Street. All of the viewing grandstands along the way are ticketed sites and with designated entry points. I'm told that the parade will feature 17 giant character balloons, 27 floats, 13 marching bands, and 8,000 total marchers. That includes some clowns, dancers, cheerleaders, what we see every year. And Manhattan obviously will be very congested on Thursday. If you have to drive, crosstown traffic in Midtown will be running on 57th Street and 42nd Street. The NYPD press office will put out a complete list of street closures soon. There'll also be designated pedestrian crossings throughout the parade route. As with all major public events since 9/11, we employ a counterterrorism overlay that will include the usual elements of a highly visible police presence at and around the Thanksgiving festivities. This will include extra uniformed police officers and traffic agents, plus additional mobile cameras, helicopters, canine and mounted units. We'll have observation posts manned by emergency service officers to look for any suspicious activity, and we'll have plainclothes cops work amid the crowds. Specially trained dogs will sniff for traces of explosives in the air, while officers assigned to the NYPD's Counterterrorism Bureau will use radiation detectors for hunt for any evidence of a dirty bomb. This year, for the first time, our force will be supplemented by approximately 200 freshly trained, armed Critical Response Command cops, working along with our police officers from the Strategic Response Group. There'll be a lot of police presence, things the public will see, and of course, things the public will not see. All this will ensure that New York City has a safe and wonderful Thanksgiving, as we do every year. Thanks.
Okay, we can open it up for whatever. I just read that this morning in the paper. I would not support that. That in terms of the city's going to great pains to put bicycle lanes in and to exclude the bicyclists from the traffic rules that everybody else, pedestrians and vehicles, are supposed to follow. I would not be supportive of that under any circumstances.
Commissioner Brown, participants or people who will be watching the parade, will they feel anything different? Will they see anything different compared to yours?
We always police that parade with very large numbers of uniformed officers. This year, I think you will see even a larger presence that, as Chief O'Neill has indicated, that we'll be utilizing two of our newer units, the Critical Response Command and the Strategic Response Group. Some of those officers would be equipped with the long guns, as we refer to them, the rifles, that we'll have additional Hercules teams. Those are the heavily armed entities that will be around the area of the parade route. But I think the police presence will heighten the sense of security. It's supposed to be a beautiful weather day, one of the most beautiful days we've had in recent years, and we estimate that we might potentially have record-breaking crowds because of that weather situation this year, and we're prepared for that. We're encouraging people to come on down. I can remember many years where I froze to death in that parade, and so I'm actually looking forward to a little warmer weather this year.
When the situation occurs, do you find that this particular parade this year poses some unique issues, some uneasiness among people, and how then do you kind of make people feel it?
That issue of fear or unease is an individual choice that I'm going to be there. I'm going to enjoy it, look forward to it. And I would encourage people to come down and enjoy it. We are very comfortable that we are able to secure it as we have in years past. There is no threat being directed against the parade, credible threat. As you're aware in this city, that we're really always on a heightened state of alert, maybe compared to most American cities because of the nature of who we are here in New York. But at this juncture, that as you've seen in recent days, we've been doing a lot of preparedness, the new units that we're forming, the drills that we just went through on Sunday. No, people should have no fear. What we would ask, though, awareness of, in terms of the restrictions as far as getting into the area, traffic restrictions certainly, and just the very large crowds, and work with us on the crowd management and crowd control. And if there is something that they see that makes them feel uncomfortable, certainly make us aware of it, and we can very quickly check it out with very large numbers of personnel that we'll have there.
Commissioner, how many people do you currently have in Paris and France working on the Paris attacks? And what lessons have you learned, and have you started to implement whatever you've learned?
Let me actually ask Commissioner Miller and Chief Waters that can speak to the specific numbers and what's been going on since the events of a week or so ago. And we will, at some point, as we did after Charlie Hebdo, send over a larger contingent to work with our French colleagues, but only after they're comfortable that they've got their situation well in hand. John, if you could. Jim.
Tom, as you know, we have the detective who's assigned to Paris, who's there full-time. Given the volume of work, the number of contacts, and the level of information, we immediately sent a French-speaking detective from New York City who had been posted there before. So that's an individual who has the same context and contacts to back him up. In addition, we sent investigators to other relevant places like Brussels, Antwerp, to make sure that that we were providing them with any assistance the NYPD could, and continuing that flow of information. But what you see is there are leads that come up in Madrid, where our detective in Madrid will send that information to Paris. There are things being bounced off the liaison post in London that are being sent back. Interpol, where we have a detective assigned, becomes a critical juncture here. So it's not just about having a detective in Paris. It's about exploiting the network of liaison relationships to make sure two things. Number one, that the NYPD, in terms of our understanding of the training, tactics, and procedures of the terrorists, are adjusting our counterterrorism overlay here to fit that particular set of attacks. And number two, that the information is flowing through that network and back here, and that any requests for assistance that come from any of those places are being filled to the best of our ability. And all of this, of course, is being done in coordination with the FBI, which has its own Office of International Operations, so it's tied together.
John, you actually have the FBI sent over from the Joint Terrorism Task Force, and you got people that have in that group also over there.
Good point, Commissioner. As well as the detectives from Chief Galati's Intelligence Bureau, from Chief Waters' Joint Terrorism Task Force side. When the FBI sends its package over from the New York office, there are, of course, NYPD detectives as JTTF members who are embedded there. So we've had a significant footprint both within the FBI construct and within the NYPD Intel Bureau construct working together.
Anything you learned changed your strategies in the years?
They've certainly instructed our strategies to some degree, but Tom, I would also say that in many ways have validated our strategies. And what I mean by that is we have been dealing, and I think you know from the cases that were brought here in June through the JTTF, with a number of suspects on the ground in the New York City area who were recruited online, tasked online by ISIS, and through the use of other applications that are communications devices to get together attacks against New York City that were thwarted through good intelligence and good investigation. The first thing you see from Paris is these are people who included foreign fighters who were hardened, trained, and experienced. They weren't gathered up by Twitter chats online in Paris. They were sent there with a specific task and targets, likely from ISIS command and control, and it was a well-organized plot. When you look at the fact that for the last year we've been developing the CRC, the Critical Response Command, to have a dedicated counterterrorism force at our most sensitive locations, that they would be armed with special weapons and enhanced body armor to deal with the next level of active shooter. When you add into that the idea that we did a drill on Sunday that we didn't throw together on Friday. It's been in the planning for a year. It's been almost full-time planning since July as we decided to test new tactics, new equipment, new technology, and the fact that, that Chief O'Neill, in the course of the same last month, has developed the SRG, the Strategic Response Group, taking the borough-based task forces and culling them into a citywide flying squad that can be divided into modules or brought together as a large group that have a number of talents, including active shooter training, special weapons, and enhanced body armor. So if you look at the Paris attacks as of Friday, what we learned, the following Monday is all of the pieces we've been putting together are taking us in the right direction in terms of our tactics, training, and procedures to match those we're seeing by the adversary.
I may just add to that and some of you have already reported on this as we've talked about it, that over the last year, actually the last 2 years, almost simultaneous with my appointment and Commissioner Miller coming on board and this team assembling, we saw the spread of ISIS, its influence, social media, and now certainly the events the last couple of weeks. But we had been planning over time, developed budget requests, and got approval for additional personnel, equipment, facilities. And we're fortunate that that previous planning is coming online right now when the issue of concern is expanding dramatically. So that where we may have had 100 or so officers equipped in the city at any one time to deal with the potential of an active shooter, multiple active shooters. And when I'm talking about 100 people that would have the equipment and the long guns, et cetera, on an average time, we would have easily now, with the almost 2,000 officers that are now in these commands, 400 to 500 officers available. And that's on average, let alone that if we ramp up for an event like a Thanksgiving parade or if we have a significantly enhanced threat. So the city has really dynamically improved the capabilities of these strategic units. In addition, that we are in the process of training our patrol force on active shooter drill. Over 3,000 officers have been through that intensive training already. The benefit of that training was reflected in the drill that we had on Sunday, in which the first two responding officers in that drill, two transit officers who had been randomly pulled in from patrol for that exercise, entered the subway and immediately neutralized the threat in the subway, much to our satisfaction, but just reflective of how important that training is, because the reality is the first response will probably be two uniformed officers coming out of a sector car to deal with it. So there's been a very significant enhancement of our capabilities over this past year. Good news, as we go into next year, that'll be increasing significantly as the training and the total equipping of all these personnel is completed. Al?
Commissioner, on that point, could you elaborate a little bit about, you talked about the cues to their intent in terms of the possible terrorism incident unfolding and how the immediate officers are to judge between what exactly they have. What does that look like in terms of how do they determine if it is a traditional hostage job or a a 9/11 thing where
The-
they're drawing you in, or if it's something where you can't waste time, you gotta go in?
Each circumstance is going to be different. The nuances are infinite in terms of the scenarios we could put together. The focus of our training recently relative to what we've been experiencing beginning back in Mumbai when I was with the LAPD. Within a few months of that event in the LAPD, we totally changed how we were going to respond to active shooter incidents, particularly multiple incidents that had very early on potential terrorist significance, with the idea that those people are not interested in negotiating for the release of hostages. They're just there to kill and ultimately be killed themselves. So training focus has changed dramatically, but we still rely on individual officers as well as intelligence that we're receiving on an event to make decisions based on what they're confronting. We will be greatly assisted in that effort. By March, every one of our personnel will have the new smartphones, and the smartphones will significantly improve our capability to get information out very quickly, pictures, scenarios, the ability to bring up schematics, that the benefit of those smartphones will only begin to be felt when they're all out in March, but then the training expansion of their capabilities, coupled with the additional training we're given. There's an awful lot going on behind the scenes in the department that has been going on for the last couple of years that you're only now beginning to become aware of because of the events going on around the world. Back, let me do in the back here, please.
Commissioner, the FBI and others, Homeland Security, sent out a bulletin overnight regarding copycat terrorist attackers to law enforcement across the country. Comments on that?
Yes, that we're always concerned in this country with the, and matter of fact, when Director Comey was up last week, we talked about this issue. The inspired lone wolf, the potentially directed lone wolf or lone wolf pack from an ISIS type of social media site, or the copycat. We've seen that in traditional crime, that you have a string of crime and then somebody commits a similar string of crime. And the idea is to sort that out. But that is always a concern, particularly in today's age where it's so easy to be stimulated, so easy to get a lot of details about an event and effectively try to replicate it. So it's part of the new world that we're living in, the social media world, that the exchange of information, access to details, and IC's access to how to, in fact, make a bomb, conduct an attack. It's a whole new world out there that, fortunately, the department, with the resources we have, we're really able to keep pace with it, and in some instances, get ahead of it. Yes, sir? Yeah, not be better.
Commissioner Brennan, what other improvements do you think should be made in light of these recent attacks in terms of security, especially with these upcoming holiday events?
Oh, I think it's quite clear what we're advocating through you, certainly, is this idea of don't be afraid, be aware. It's part of the new world we live in. I grew up in the 50s when the big fear was nuclear annihilation. And the exercises, I can still remember, running into the basement of the school building, picking at the asbestos lining on the pipes back in those days, that probably getting more danger out of the asbestos than the nuclear attack, or getting under your desk. And those circles, those yellow and black circles indicating take shelter here. It really is a new era that we're in of, I think, encouragement, particularly at special events, whether it's a parade, a music event, a sporting event, of awareness. There's only so many of us, trained eyes, trained expertise, but there's 300 million Americans that we need to rely on them. And this is a security, public safety, freedom from fear is a shared responsibility. The more of us that are engaged in working together, the safer we will be.
Commissioner, along that same line, the State Department put an advisory out, basically encouraging Americans to stay away from events.
That doesn't apply in New York City. When I was reading that this morning, I was saying that might apply in certain parts of the world at certain times, but in New York City, you're always in a crowd, whether there's 200 of you jammed into a 60-foot subway car, or it's on an average sidewalk. That we live in a very crowded, densely populated city. So the idea of avoiding crowds during certain times, maybe if we are receiving a specific threat, or what Belgium is going through at the moment, or Boston went through actually immediately after the marathon bombing several years ago, as you recall, they issued a stay-in-place request and the public stayed inside. But in New York, we're here encouraging come down and join the crowd. Be one of the 3 million who are going to have a great time on Thanksgiving. It's how New York City works. It's how it's always worked, and it's how it always will work. That, well, in terms of, I think they were speaking much more to overseas travel issues rather than here in the United States. And even in that regard, a lot of the State Department advisory warnings about travel to foreign countries, particularly countries that have always had security issues or now might be under a particular threat within the borders of the United States, that we have no reason not to feel secure, that, but that's where the awareness comes in to help us to continue to feel secure.
Commissioner Brand, can you please elaborate a little bit on Al's question about the idea of first responders in certain types of situations, neutralizing the threat rather than maybe engaging in a hostage negotiation tactic? Is that something that the department internalized after Mumbai that has since become more clear? Can you walk us through when that?
Well, I can speak to, at the time Mumbai, I was the chief of police in Los Angeles, and John Miller was the assistant director at the FBI and came to LA to give a presentation on what the FBI had found in Mumbai, and a phenomenal learning experience out of that terrorist attack. One, the multiple attacks. Two, the idea that the taking of hostages was only to prolong the media event. There was no effort ever going to be to negotiate the surrender of those hostages. And the idea of an external controlled event in which the hostage takers or the assailants were being continually directed by others in another country. And the idea that the Indian police were totally unprepared for dealing with that circumstance. It took them so long to respond, and even then when they did respond, they didn't go in. The idea also that we just learned from Paris of the suicide vests is another element that's just escalated the seriousness of what we're dealing with. So these are always learning experiences, but again, going back to the earlier question, each one has to, first responding officer has to try to determine what is he or she actually facing, and then as more resources come in, more intelligence dealing with it. But we're training our officers pretty much to get in as fast as you can, try to save as many lives as you can, and that's the focus of the training that we've been engaged in.
Time for a couple more.
Can you share the number of officers you typically have working in Thanksgiving Day parade versus the number you have this year, or for the?
The number has increased this year, that as you might expect, and you will also see throughout the holiday season, you will see in a time of year when we have a lot of personnel, traffic agents, et cetera. I just authorized yesterday increasing the number of traffic agents to deal with the expected traffic, low gas prices, tremendous amount of construction going on in Manhattan, a lot of roads that would normally be open to us, and a lot of volume that might not be here when gas was $4 a gallon. We're already seeing that before we even get into gridlock days. So we'll be increasing more traffic agents. The Chief O'Neill, Chief Gomez, their people have been beefing up not only for the major events, tree lighting, parade, but you'll see a lot more police around throughout the holiday season.
Mr. Bratton, what do you think about a new strategy of the terrorists, multiple shooters in multiple locations? Do you think that can happen in New York?
That's actually not a new strategy. We talked about the Mumbai event was the first time we saw that on a large scale. I still remember briefings John Miller used to give that both when he was my counterterrorism chief in LA and then when he moved on to the FBI about the Al-Qaeda strategy throughout their time with multiple events at the same time, usually 3 at a time. They like to do the bombing of 3 embassies. They like to do multiple events at one time. ISIS has, as he clearly evidenced in Paris, has now adopted that strategy, and so we'll watch that. Another one that we'll watch for very closely is something that they're experiencing in the war zone over there that Chief Miller briefed Major City Chiefs on last year at the Major City Chiefs Conference, the strategy of creating an armored vehicle whose intent with the suicide driver is to basically move forward in a war zone against heavily armored, heavily equipped locations. So everything that's going on over there, we will be watching for here and trying to prepare to defend against that type of scenario. It's a new world we're living in. It's a very troubling world, but we will do our best to really, for us to worry and the population to be aware.
Commissioner, just turning to events of yesterday, in the 113, there was an arrest for a person who apparently killed a baby. I was just wondering a little bit, it took 11 months to solve the case. Just
Yeah, Bob Boyce, actually, if, in terms of while Bob is up, if you have traditional crime-related stories that our crime guru here can basically respond to those. So it's while he's up, if you have crime-related questions, just please feel free to direct them at Bob. Chief of Detectives, Bob Boyce. Bob?
Hi, good morning. The incident you talked about, Tom, happened January 25th. This is out at 113 in Queens. Immediately, an autopsy was performed and testing was requested. Neuropathology came back to us 2 weeks ago. We had a meeting with the OCME, the Queens District Attorney's Office, and homicide detectives, and we arrested Jaleel Williams last night on Monday. We arrested him for the murder, too, of the infant. The OCME wanted further testing before we move forward with a homicide investigation. That's the reason for the 10-month difference in the case. That's not unusual. That's happened before. So testing came back with subdural hematomas on the child.
Case in point, Bob, of a delay in the decision, the two that we classified as a homicide, the fire victims that came back, that it was not...
Yes, sir. We wait. It's a great point. It's in Bedford-Stuyvesant, we had 2 deaths on a fire. Initially, we thought they were arson homicides. Science came back on they were not, so we took them off the list. It was not an accelerant used, and it was by accidental means the fire. So sometimes it's better to wait and get the whole story. These 2 individuals were no longer living together at the time. We were able to get him back into New York and make the arrest last night, which we got a statement from him in regards. So the case is moving forward to Queens courts.
Thank you very much.
Any other crime questions while Bob is up? One in the back here, and then we'll call it a day.